Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to do an album review today, which is where I listen to an entire album. It's going to be a lengthy video. I give you my thoughts in between tracks. We're going to check out one from Black Country New Road. It's actually their new album, 2022, called Ants From Up There. We have heard one track from this album. It was Snow Globes, I think. That sounds about right. We did a reaction to it. We're going to check out the rest of the album now. Kind of excited about this. Black Country New Road has been on my list of albums to check out this year, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet, so I'm glad to do it in this format, in this capacity, really digging into it. We're going to start out with intro, and it's only 55 seconds, so it'll take us into track 2. We'll pause there, we'll discuss, and we'll take the rest of the album as we go. So, here's the first track, intro. Very rhythmically bouncy, but just in 4/4. A repetition of a 2-beat phrase. Really sticking with the oddity in the rhythmic phrasing. Yeah, so it's a grouping of 2 and 4. Very theatric.
All that went wrong. The sailor boys light up in song and they sing of London. Love they made there, will it really last?
Never really giving us full resolution. Very clear production.
Said to me, oh, I'm a chaos space marine, so what? I love you, darling, will you take my metal hand? It's cold.
Leaning a bit into dreariness as well.
These things take up space inside your mind, where you could be keeping honest thoughts of the sea alone. So I'm leaving this body.
Huge moment.
Coming home again, yeah. I'll bury the action between the window and the kingdom of men. I'm becoming a world now.
The horns are giving us these long suspended notes, but the violin is going off.
Here I come now. In time you will find these things take up.
Oh, that was so good.
In time you will find these things take you. And now, so long, jump. I'm coming home. Billy Eilish style.
Okay, so we actually got a 7-beat phrase there. What was a rogue sax note? Beautiful. Oh, I forgot. Dang, I forgot to change. Yeah, that was a Chaos Space Marine. So caught up in the moment. Interesting start. I'm sold on some of this. It's a very abrasive beginning. Here's where I'm standing at right now, though. There are beautiful layers all throughout this track. A lot of instruments providing a lot of different ideas, some foundational, some melodic, some ornamental, some textural. And they're utilized in ways both traditionally and experimentally to craft not only something that is musically appealing at times, but also atmospherically engaging. I can feel the emotion of these two tracks. Well, of this track. While also enjoying a bit of the more eclectic elements of it. It speaks to what I expect from music while also engaging in some boundary pushing. And I guess I just used a lot of words to say this is prog rock. It is very cool though that it's prog rock, but it's also not rock. Something we gotta talk about right here is instrumentation, which I don't know why this isn't a note I've made yet. The instruments in here are wild. We have saxophones, a violin, which a couple of times fell into fiddle playing. We have the drums. We have a bass guitar, but I don't think we have a electric guitar. We have the vocals. There's probably some other things I'm missing. There might be an acoustic guitar. I don't know. I gotta double check that. And I think there's more to the horn section, but the sax is the only thing that's coming to mind. But what I'm getting at here is that this is more of an eclectic, small orchestra arrangement, more so than a rock band. But the composition, I feel, is being not confirmed. It's being created from a rock standpoint. That is to say that it's based around a lot of repetition. There is there's a mainstream angle that the composition is based around, with simple concepts of verse. I don't think we had choruses in here, but definitely verse, repetition. In classical we call it an ostinato. In rock you call it a riff. In jazz it's called a lick. But just repeated phrases show up often. I could even say that there's a little bit of a post-rock angle here in the express use of textures in our intro track, where the repetition of it was designed expressly, I think, to drive home an atmosphere and hopefully put the listener in a specific mindset before leading into Chaos Space Marine. Because the intro is just not a song I enjoyed. It's literally called intro. It's right on the money right there. It is a short track that introduces the album, and it does introduce a concept we heard a few times in Chaos Space Marine as well, which is segmented riffs and high repetition. we have a single riff that does not lend itself to looping smoothly. A lot of guitar riffs, I think I kind of take this for granted. Um, but many guitar riffs in rock and metal are not just groovy or catchy, but also do a very good job of finding a way back to the start. They have a fluidity to them that allows the cyclical element to feel natural. And here in both of these songs, they push against that. Now, I don't remember bringing this up in Snow Globes, and we just checked out a track called Opus, like last month or a month before. Not from this album. I think it was from the one just before it. But either way, I don't remember this coming up there either. So maybe this is just segmented to this one track, and the rest of the album does not further explore this concept. But we just had almost 5 minutes worth of these riffs that do not lend themselves to cyclical repetitions but are cyclically repeated. They have very abrasive stops that bring us back to the start. Um, it's very disjointed. And not only that, but they're paired with odd rhythmic phrasings. In intro, it is a series of asymmetric uh, triplets, I think it was. Because it was do 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 do, a block of two, the do do. We return back to the top and do a block of four, do 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 do. Everybody's in on this. Now it feels in 4/4. The do 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 is 6 hits that hit in 2 beats, so 3 per beat. I'm talking triplets right here. Um, but it's very rigid. Not just the doo doo into the next doo doo. That's terrible. Not the first 2 notes into the next 4, which is a bit abrasive as well, but coming down at the bottom and coming back up. There isn't any flow there. Now, this felt a bit more, it felt odd at the moment, but it felt a lot more natural than the final riff that we had in Chaos Space Marine, which was based on a 6-beat phrase in a 7-beat bar. So we have 6 beats of music followed by a beat of silence into a repetition of the idea. So we have our phrase and then a block of silence, and then we're just back to the beginning of the phrase. Not only just that, but it's also a 7-beat bar. We're working in 7/4 or maybe alternating bars of 3/4 and 4/4, which creates a disjointedness already. Since the whole song has been in 4/4 up to this point, and our intro is in 4/4, our natural expectations for this moment when it comes up into this final section is more 4/4. So not only do we have a hard break at the end of our phrase, the music stops abruptly, but the music repeats itself, it returns a beat earlier than is expected. It's just very abrasive, purposefully disorienting. Again, I don't know if this is going to be something we hear a lot of throughout the album, but it's a recurring idea we've picked up on throughout our opening 5 minutes. Now, the use of space is really interesting in this track because there is one line that was repeated. Again, repetition is just very big for this band. Somewhere in the middle, probably about 2.5 minute mark, the vocals were saying something about these things take time. And I don't think anything plays there. If it is, it's a suspended note, but it is just a long bit of anticipation. It is bringing the presence of time to the listener's awareness. It's a really great moment for that. There are very few times where I think hard breaks work other than just being disruptive, and they're fantastic at that. Um, but this was a pretty great example of utilizing music to bring lyrical themes to the forefront of the listener. You are really sitting there in that moment. When is the song going to continue? When are you going to finish the phrase? We know how the phrase ends. These things take time is a very old adage. even young people have probably heard it in films or from their parents or whatever. You know the words coming. You know the music still needs to resolve. You know the riff needs to, repeat itself, or the song needs to move on. There's still time left on the album or on the track, and they're just sitting there. And it really brings that time to the forefront. It's a very neat idea. It is so far the only more experimental concept that has really clicked with me. Everything else feels abrasive for abrasive's sake, but the whole song's not abrasive. There is some phenomenal stuff going on here, especially in what I think is the chorus of this track. Okay, so it's linear. The lyrics say verse, chorus, bridge, outro, but I don't know, it's the hooky part. the the part that actually had some bite to it. Um, so many phenomenal musical layers going on there. I had mentioned that we had some elements that were, I think I said the sax was doing these suspended things, the violin were off on the right, just tearing it up with these 16th notes. Our vocalist had full power and presence. The drums, the bass was doing their thing. There's just so many, and the thing is it wasn't cluttered. It was definitely getting a bit compact, but there's a lot of clarity and space to the production that facilitates all of these sounds to be present at the same time and to provide the type of moving layering that they have throughout this song. It was beautiful, and it reminds me. No, I don't know where I'm going with that. My feelings toward this track so far, towards this album so far, are like 70% positive, 30% not really my cup of tea, but I'm interested to see where they take it. This is like a small, quintet, sextet of orchestral instruments that happen to be playing rock music in a bit of an experimental concept. They have some of the heavy layering that we hear in math rock or Renaissance classical. Um, they have some of the experimentation of prog rock. They have the instrumentation of classical, but they also have some jazzy elements in there as well as far as composition goes. And there's a lot of use of repeated ideas that stem from modern mainstream music. And vocally, spoken word, which again just kind of leans into that highly experimental. There is a rhythmic and melodic flow. Okay, well, okay, so that's the thing. Spoken word has rhythm to it, especially if you kind of go with the poetry angle and you stick to a meter, which I think is what happens. There is a rhythmic flow in our verse, but our chorus, I felt there was also intended pitching going on. It was a mid ground between speaking and singing. So again, just a lot of experimental things going on in there as well. Uh, I'm I'm optimistic about this album. It is short, long. There's 10 tracks, which feels so small compared to last time's Genesis, which I think was like 18, 20 tracks. There was a lot of them. But it is 58 minutes, which is close to an hour. An hour long albums, I feel like they're pretty lengthy. Um, I don't know what it is. Yeah, you watch a movie and it's like 2 hours, and you're like, oh, that's just kind of the standard. But an hour-long album, I'm just like, dang, that's pretty lengthy. Um, of all my 2022 albums that I'm trying to catch up on, I've listened to everything sub 40 right now. They feel more digestible. Anything over, hitting that hour mark, anything over an hour feels daunting. Like that's a lot of time to listen to an album straight. I don't know. Anybody else feel that way? So let's get into this. Like I said, long, short. Feels like there's not a lot of tracks, but there is a lot of music. Granted, the second longest track on the album is something we've listened to and dug into heavily already. I'm going to try my best not to retread too much when we hit Snow Globes. But I do want to talk about it in the context of the album. If, maybe I also have additional things to say having listened to it a second time. But all right, let's dive back into this. We're going to hit the next track here, which is Concorde. No, we're not. We got to hit lyrics first, especially since I'm really interested in this. Chaos Space Marine. I only know of one thing that's Chaos Space Marine, and that's Warhammer 40k. I'm not a huge nerd about Warhammer, but I do know enough to make me dangerous to be around when the topic comes up. But anyways, they're defectors of the Space Marines who fight for the Imperium, I think is what it's called, or the Emperor. It's like a big religious order around it. They're like religious fanatic space police. And there's defectors who go fight for the forces of chaos, and those are the Chaos Space Marines. I don't think Warhammer 40k is really that big of a property. It's not like name dropping Marvel or, maybe a decade ago Lord of the Rings. I don't know how popular Lord of the Rings is with kids these days. But, a decade ago it was pretty big with everyone. Star Wars, name dropping a Star Wars, just casually talking about lightsabers, that feels natural. This feels very specific. Even just using it as the title implies a sort of niche knowledge to our lyricist. Makes me think they're kind of nerdy. What musician isn't nerdy? All right, let's hit this up. And though England is mine, I must leave it all behind. The war is over, lift the anchors, set out an open course for New York state lines. Oddly enough, that kind of fits. Like I said, they are defectors who went from their original religion to a new one, and this is about somebody leaving their home behind to find a new one. Loose parallelism, but still odd. I can't believe I drew that parallel there, or that they did even. I think of all that went wrong. The sailor boys line up in song, and they sing of London. Love they made there, will it really last any time? What's that you said to me? Oh, I'm a Chaos Space Marine. So what? I love you, darling. Will you take my metal hand? It's cold. In time, you will find these things take up space inside your mind, where you could be keeping honest thoughts of the sea alone. So this feels like saying that, uh, you know, people sing of London, of how great it is, but he says, the love that you make here, the memories you have, do they really last? And apparently there's somebody he's leaving behind. He says, take my metal hand. It's cold. I'm not sure what that's necessarily relating to, but it seems that they're not going with him to America. And he says, these things take up space inside your mind where you can keep honest thoughts of the sea. So, don't think about me anymore, right? That kind of deal. There's better things you can be thinking about. And I think there's even a little bit of self-deprecation here, where that better thing you can be thinking about other than me is just the sea, right? I don't deserve more space in your mind and your thoughts than of the ocean in general. Maybe that's just my reading of it, though. The chorus says, so I'm leaving this body and I'm never coming home again. I'll bury the axe here between the window and the kingdom of men. I'm becoming a worm now and I'm looking for a place to live. Here I come. Hmm. And he basically says, I'm leaving everything behind then. I don't know about the worm bit, but I'm leaving this body feels both personal. The person that you have lived in this place is being left behind, as well as leaving the physical country kind of idea. And he says, I'll bury the axe here. So every grudge that I have is going to be left here, starting life anew when I hit New York. It says, I'm becoming a worm and looking for a place to live. I don't know. In time you will find these things take up. In time you will find these things take up. In time you'll find these. Okay, so it wasn't a perfect loop. I thought he was saying these things take up time. But he says these things take up, and then we repeat the idea, in time you will find these things take up. Almost as if the time is implied through the space that exists there. He says, and now, so long, chumps. I'm coming home, Billie Eilish style. A Concorde will fly, ignore the hole I've dug again. I don't know what the Concorde's a bird, right? So he says birds will fly. I mean, that makes, I don't know what Billie Eilish style is. It says, I'm coming home, though. Unless he's already calling New York his home, even if he isn't there yet. Ignore the hole I've dug again, almost to say that the mistakes of the past are going to be repeated. Interestingly, the next track is called Concorde. Yep. So, a Concorde will fly, and he's getting in the airplane and flying. Okay. And the album art is a little toy airplane in a sealed bag. Is this a personal album about something the band really did? Or maybe just the singer in between albums or something. Or maybe they remotely make music now because the singer lives in America and the band still lives in England. I don't know. I feel like this is very personal and I'm missing the context of these people's lives to fully understand what's going on here. Or it could be like Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, where it's completely fictional, but yeah, just completely fictional. I don't know, I guess we'll have to go forward. I remember, though, I think Opus and Snow Globes, though, were both very personal stories to the lyricists, if I remember the comments right. So, I don't know, we're going to have to keep rolling and see what goes on. We'll see how personal or anything this goes. Let's move on with Concorde. Let's roll on with Concorde. Why isn't Concorde going? There we go. So we're in a nice little 3/4. Interesting rhythm coming from our drum kit. It dances between... It was dancing between march ideas and waltz, but now we are very firmly in the waltz.
The doctor said we are unfortunately running out of options to treat. What a funny way to speak. And you, like Concorde, I came a gentle hill racer. I was breathless upon every mountain just to look through your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm digging that. Little ornamental thing on the stringed instrument over there. Oh, we got a tambourine in there now?
Concorde, I miss you, don't text me till winter. I can hardly afford
Piano? Yeah, there's a lot of
second
instruments I
summer.
missed.
Splinters, this staircase, it leads only to some old pictures of you. within 1,000 miles long tube.
I like the hopefulness coming in through the piano. Everything else feels very dreary, but the piano has inspired other instruments to bring this cheerfulness. And it leads into the layered vocals, as if to say there's people around our vocalist.
Upon every mountain, just to look for your light. But for less than a moment, we'd share the same sky. And then Isaac will suffer. Concorde will lie.
Beautiful. We got clean guitars and electric guitars in here. The section shifted to 4.
Concorde, we're old now.
Oh, no. It felt like 4.
And led by the dark to our place on the table. So don't tell me you're hungry, 'cause darling, I'm starving myself. And I heard you're on Atkins as well.
That's a throwback. Is Atkins Diet even still around? I thought it got rebranded to Keto.
Can't you tell? And you like Concorde. I came a light blue sleeper, and I laid dead or twitching for most of the night. But I know that you'll be there. The Sandman inside. And I'll come to like a child. Concorde, I die free this time.
All right. Yeah, this is good. It took everything I loved about the second track and leaned into it, which makes me think some of the more abrasive elements in our opening 5 minutes were thematically about something I didn't catch on to. Instead of something the band leans into just as a sonic quality of their writing style. I think I pointed out really everything I wanted to musically that was going on here. Beautiful layers, beautiful vocal harmonies. I loved the additional instruments. We had the electric guitar, the tambourine, the piano, which I don't remember in track 2. And just the overall way of building the verses and layering them up in a similar manner that we saw in track 2, with some instruments doing foundational, some doing moving lines, some doing ornamental work. It is right up my alley, the exact type of music that I really enjoy listening to. So, I do want to talk about something that I forgot to bring up with Chaos Space Marine, though, and that is atmosphere, emotional connection. There is something very somber about all the tracks we've listened to so far. It definitely ties into some of Chaos Space Marine's lyrics as well, about leaving things behind and starting brand new. Um, leaving friends behind, uh, leaving memories behind, leaving yourself. So I'm going to leave this body. And basically just saying, I'm starting on a fresh slate when I leave this place. That's bittersweet. It really is. The outlook of being able to start fresh is very awesome, at least to me. I don't know. I just it always looks appealing. Maybe I romanticize it, but just being able to start from nothing again. No preconceived notions of who you are, no, recollections of your past, your actions you've done, no ties to anyone or anything, just starting completely fresh. But there's also a lot of sadness to that. And I think that's what Chaos Space Marine was about, the optimism of a new chance mixed with the sorrow of leaving everything behind. And Concorde, I think, really leaned into both of these sounds as well. A lot of this is just a very somber track. It's not necessarily sad, but it's heavy. A lot of that comes in the notes themselves. We don't have a lot of staccato notes in here. There aren't many ideas that feature a lot of back-to-back notes that would drive any intensity or momentum for it. Everything is these long suspended tones. And we have a lot of slides and slurs between our notes to emphasize a lack of energy. It's not negative, it's dreary, right? We do see some positivity. The piano brings it in our verse 2 leading into our chorus. Our chorus is very bright, and we have a big moment at the end, which we'll talk about in a second. But the two verses and the beginning of the first chorus, it's kind of dreary, and a lot of this I think pairs well with our vocalist. Our vocalist feels so beaten down. It feels energyless. It's some of it I think has to do just with the range. He has an extremely deep voice, or maybe he's just really leaning into it. Just really pushing his voice down as far as it'll go. Or maybe it's just that's his natural range. Maybe he just got a deep voice. But either way, it feels very low energy comparatively. We there's just not too many people who sing at this range in music. Higher vocals or even mid-range vocals are just a lot more popular, and they feel more energetic. Now, some of this could also be due to production on the vocals as well. I don't know how to EQ for electricity or how to EQ for somberness, but I'm sure there are techniques for that to bring out specific aspects or colors in a voice to achieve specific feelings. But there's something so run down about the vocals. And again, it's not just the range, though, it's also the lack of strong enunciation between words. Do 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 do. It's these very light legato uh, uh, attacks for each of the syllables. That just it feels like somebody just down on their luck. Someone who's just been beaten down by life and is just This is all the energy they can muster. And we do hear a massive explosion of energy at the end, leading into our final moment. The voice cracks a little bit. It almost sounds like went for a compressed clean for a split second. The volume rose up quite a bit as well. But the majority of the vocals we've heard thus far on the album are sort of down here and dreary. Just, this is what the song's about, and this is how I'm going to sing it. And there's something very down to earth about that. I really enjoy that. It's I'm a huge fan of theatrics. We talked about this last year in my album of the year video when I was talking about Hail the Sun. I love overly theatric lyrics paired with overly theatric vocal deliveries. That will sell me every time. But there's also something that just it's very easy to connect with this vocal style or vocal delivery and range and just all of it. And that brings us to the outro. And something I want to talk about is dynamics. This band is not afraid to use a lower volume. They have very modern production on the vocals, on the instruments, but they don't stick to the idea that the song must be maximum volume all the time with the illusion of quieter sections. That bass coming into our final verse was very difficult to hear. I was half tempted to turn the volume up. I'm glad I didn't, because little did I know our verse and chorus was not the loudest part of the song. And the track ended at this massive moment, volume-wise. And I love that. What I thought was the loudest wasn't, and there is actually some really quiet sections here. It's just really great use of volume dynamics. But that final section also brings a bunch of energy, tension, movement. We actually hear a lot of ideas that hit on every beat. And some that play faster than. We get some eighth notes in there as well. It has momentum, it has direction. I don't know about direction. It has momentum at least. It does feel a bit chaotic. There's a lot of lines doing their own thing, and I've praised the clarity of the production thus far, but right there I think it is purposefully crafted in a way that allows the instruments to talk over each other. It sounds a bit like a crowded party more so than an organized song. And again, I think it's done very intentionally given how the production has been thus far. Yeah, very bittersweet song. Is that the lyrics? Because I think that's everything. Yeah. See what's going on here. Concorde, this organ, the new one I'm forming, it's grown so persistent on you. By the morning, I'd fell to my feet, and the doctor said we are unfortunately running out of options to treat. What a funny way to speak. I don't know if you heard that thunder. I paused to think about what this is talking about, and I was like, "Whoa," just a big rumble outside. I am recording in the middle of a hurricane, so you might hear some rain and stuff like that. Anyways, I have no idea. I mean, obviously, there is a doctor, but I don't know if the illness is physical or figurative. This organ, this new organ I'm forming, it's grown persistent on you. And the doctor said we've run out of options to treat it. It feels metaphorical. It feels like there's a longing for this other person. And there's no way to get rid of that longing. That's kind of what I get out of it, but I'm kind of guessing there. I can't pinpoint any line and say this is why I'm thinking this. The chorus says, "In you, like Concorde, I came a gentle hill racer. I was breathless up on every mountain just to look for your light." Okay, so this definitely leans in that direction. This is about being homesick, possibly. The person who he said, take my hand and come with me, and they didn't. Kind of the vibe I got from the second track. Feeling homesick for this person, is what I'm thinking. I wonder why the word Concorde keeps coming up. In track 2, I figured that was just a figurative look at the plane. Leaving London on a plane, called it the Concorde, but I don't know. See, verse 2 says, Concorde, I miss you. Don't text me till winter. I can hardly afford a second summer of splinters. This staircase, it leads only to some old pictures of you through an 1,000-mile long tube. What's a city boy to do? So yeah, don't text me. Don't remind you about you because, again, time. Thinking about you makes time slow down. It makes this forming organ within me grow faster. It hurts to be reminded of you, is kind of what I'm getting with that. The post-chorus says, but for less than a moment we share the same sky, and then Isaac will suffer, Concorde will fly. Who's Isaac? Personnel list. Tyler, Sergio, David, Georgia. Isaac Wood is our vocalist. Okay, so maybe, but then that means our vocalist is referring to themselves in third person, in which they constantly use I to talk about themselves. So I don't know. It's got to be someone else in the story, right? But it's never been brought up before. I don't know who this Isaac is. Final verse. Concorde, we're old now, and you wield a lightsaber. Did I just talk about how much more appropriate it would be if we referenced a larger pop culture IP like Star Wars? And I even directly said a lightsaber. I mean, it's the most iconic aspect of Star Wars, I think, other than, the Force or Yoda's species, especially now. But oh man, I really should get into being a seer of some sort, because my timing on things is not always good, but when it is, it's like I've predicted the future. Concorde. So Concorde is it's got to be the other person, but that doesn't make sense for the way that it was used in track 2, I think. Anyways, Concorde, we're old now, and you wield a lightsaber and led by the dark to our place on the table. So don't tell me you're hungry, 'cause darling, I'm starving myself. And I heard you're on Atkins as well. I was made to love you, can't you tell? I don't know. And you, light Concorde, I came a light blue sleeper, and I lay dead or twitching for most of the night. But I know that you'll be there, the Sandman inside, and I'll come to like a child, and Concorde and I die free this time. I mean, maybe these aren't supposed to be all interconnected, but the use of Concorde through both of these tell me that this is more of a conceptual thing, or at least these first 2 tracks are supposed to be read together. And this feels more of skipping time or planning out the future. Like right now it's tough. Please don't text me because, it hurts to think about you, but sometime in the future we'll be old and together and we can die together. A little bit of that morbid romanticism. But yeah, overall it's very dreary. I mean, after this line says we'll die free this time, that's when the big explosive moment happens, and there's all this power and chaos and volume, and I don't know. That's like my catchphrase for these album reactions. I don't know. Let's carry on here. We got another 6-minute track ahead of us. This one titled Bread Song? I don't know. I said it again. Let's kick it and find out what's going on. Little late start there. I really love the airiness on that note though. They came in on the downbeat but not with enough air to produce the sound. So it's like it was struggling to come in. The piano comes in real easy on the beat though, because it doesn't require air, it's percussive. 4/4 though, slower tempo.
Ignore the hole I've dug again.
Wait a second, that is not Bread Song. Okay, I don't know what happened. We're gonna hit Bread Song for real this time. That was Haldern.
Okay, well I just woke up and you already don't care.
Still starting out sober though.
I tried my best to hold you through the headset that you wear.
That's a good line.
Over where the signal's good, there's no way to save your evening now. Through the little phone that could. And yes, I was tempted.
Yeah, the suspended note to contrast with the moving line in our guitar.
And I burned scented candles there, and I hung some good pictures where the paintwork was perfect, so no one could doubt it. Oh, I was still losing.
There's so much pain in his vocals. Very warm coming in on the left though.
So show me the land you require, and slip into something beside the holes you try to hide. And lay out your rules for the night. Oh, don't eat your toast in my.
There's those dynamic swells I'm here for.
Oh, darling, I never felt the crumbs until you said this place is not for any man. More particles of bread. You furnished suffering. And you played a good organ, and the world gathered singing. Good words that you'd stolen, and every phone died then. And no one had Wi-Fi inside your apartment, so we knelt at your altar.
It's interesting because it's like a slow burn where they interrupt the burn itself occasionally for smaller pockets of growth.
And you already don't care that I tried my best to hold you through the headset that you wear, and as tight as I might hold it over where the signal's good. There's no way to save your evening now, and I'm ready for us to be understood. So show me the land you acquired, and slip into something beside the holes you tried to hide. And lay out your rules for the night. Oh, don't eat your toast in my bed. Oh, darling, I never felt the crumbs until you said this place is not for any man, nor particles of bread.
"13 seconds of silence on this one. Um, so I really enjoyed this one. Following along in the ideas of Concorde, we see another track that is heavily crafted, utilizing heavy layering and dynamic aspects to create an extremely emotionally evocative track that utilizes more experimental ideas in palatable, not in palatable ways, but in very clear ways of portraying specific emotions. The song is kind of split in half with our first slow burn followed by a massive moment in the middle with a very large swelling of volume and intensity and contrasting ideas and layering and instruments, and then we get a brand new slow burn to take us out. I had mentioned that it was like one big slow burn with smaller pockets of growth throughout, but that's not what it ended up being. I honestly thought we were going to have more of those concepts of the slow burn into a large moment, back to a slow burn, to a large moment, back to a slow burn, but they only did that once. So, the way that I see this track after having listened to it now is two slow burns separated by a momentous moment. And once again, it is dreary. It is tense. It is just very sad. There's so many moments that just really feel like a knife in the heart. They do a fantastic job of that. And it's always these choice chords. Like, it feels somber and you can just kind of be in that melancholy. and then they'll hit like two chords back to back, and it's like having your heart ripped out. And then it goes back to just the dreary melancholy. It's like, man, why do you have to go make me sad for a moment? But they're masters at that. They've been doing it since the second track there. It's melancholic, but they know when to go for that raw sadness, that overwhelming sorrow, and they know exactly when to do it, how often to do it, and what chords to pursue to land in that area. Um, 4 tracks and technically three if we don't include the intro. We're 33% done with the album then, and I think I have a pretty strong understanding of what they're doing here. I don't know that I'm going to have much more to say about songs other than masterful layering, beautiful moments, somber, heavy vocal style, and just an overall moody dreariness that is rarely offset by moments of brightness or confusion or tension. Oh, and dynamics. Their dynamics are just so good. Um, Interesting though, I completely forgot about the repetition stuff. I haven't heard much of, I mean, obviously the song is still repetitive on the foundational aspect, but it's less repetitive as a core feature of the song. Where intro and the end of track 2 heavily featured repetition from every instrument. I think both times every instrument was leaning into the same repetition. Here, the only time that we really have those repeated ideas are in foundational lines that fit under moving ideas. Um, so yeah, like I said, I feel like that was definitely done for a specific effect that maybe I just missed in those opening tracks because they have not repeated that yet. And by saying that, I've pretty much guaranteed they'll do it in the next one now. um, let's hit the lyrics because some of these were pretty fun. Is that a word for that? Some of them were outright great. But there was, I mean, talked about getting crumbs in the bed at the end. Just, what? Okay, well, I just woke up and you already don't care that I tried my best to hold you through the headset that you wear. I love that line. I heard it at the beginning of the track. It is great. Obviously, not physically holding them through the headset, but their attention is on whatever they're listening or watching. And it might even be that they're physically shrugging them off as they try to cuddle with them or hold them. It says, as tight as I might hold it over where the signal's good, there's no way to save your evening now through the little phone that could. All the attention is put towards this electronic device, and it's not going to make your evening better. Or there's no way that I can even save your evening. And yes, I was tempted, and I christened me lonely. I pretended to falter, and I burnt scented candles there, and I hung some good pictures where the paintwork was perfect so no one could doubt it. I was still losing. I pretended to falter. So I faked needed help. I faked needing help. I was lonely and tempted, so I faked needing help, and I even burnt scented candles and hung some good pictures so that no one could doubt that I was still losing. Okay. So if we're going to tie this back to Concorde, it almost feels, I mean, see, verse 1 feels in the now, but it could also be a memory. And verse 2 is him in New York still missing her. So show me the land you acquired and slip into something besides the holes you try to hide and lay out your rules for the night. Oh, don't eat your toast in my bed. Oh, darling, I never felt the crumbs until you said this place is not for any man nor particles of bread. I don't know what that means. I never felt the crumbs until you said this place is not for any man, nor particles of bread. You furnished your suffering, and you played a good organ, and the world gathered singing good words that you'd stolen, and every phone died then, and no one had Wi-Fi inside your apartment, so we knelt at your altar. Okay, well, I just woke up, and you already don't care that I tried my best. Oh, that's the same thing. As tight as I might hold it over where your signal's good, there's no way to save your evening now, and I'm ready for us to be understood. So this is about the division of a relationship, or the division in a relationship. I don't know. The somber music makes me think that it's memories. But there's also a lot of here and now that makes it feel very present. Oh, there's not actually you furnished. I never felt. I hung some good pictures. I was tempted. I was christened. I pretended. Everything's past tense. So yeah, I think this is memories. Huh. Let's keep going, I guess. I'm just kind of getting the idea that this is a series of snap. I mean, it's called Ants from Up There, right? And the album picture is of an airplane. Is this a song about, sorry, going through your memories of a place that you have possibly lived your whole life while you're on your way to a new one, a new place, a new life? Is that what this is about? Is this exploring friendships, relationships, feelings, memories, good times, bad times, knowing you're leaving it all behind? Let's dig into the next one. Good Will Hunting. This one's 5 minutes. Haldern is 5 minutes. We've already heard the opening to Haldern. Good job, Apple Music, messing up the cue. If I don't have anything to add after Good Will Hunting, especially if it is more of this dreary, high dynamic, massively layered, beautiful music, we'll probably run it straight into Haldern, and I'll talk about both together and do their lyrics back to back. All right, let's hit it.
You walk up on the raised edge, hands out for balance, slipping you almost grab mine, but you find your feet. And I never
They really
wanted
love their
so much
three.
someone to fall.
Even in
It's
Chaos
just
Space Marine,
been a weekend,
when we were
but
primarily in
my
4, we
mind
shifted to a
summer
7, which
in
was alternating
France,
4
like
and
genius
3.
daughters now. And you teach me to play the piano.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we actually have groups of 3 in our 3.
I'm scared of the phone. Don't ring it. Please know that I'm just trying.
And we've shifted to 4-4 here, but we've continued to utilize groupings of 3 in every part of the musical phrase.
And later on, everyone will say it was cool. She had Billie Eilish style.
That's the second time Billie Eilish has come up.
To Berlin for
I wish I knew what their fixation was with her.
trying to find something to hold on to. Never text me nothing, but she wants to tell me she's not that hard to find, and message me if you change your mind, darling, I'll keep fine.
Interesting use of tension. It's not heavy dissonance, but there's instability in a lot of the chords that are being played in that last section. You hear the waving in that horn.
And if we're on a burning starship, the escape pods filled with your friends, your childhood film photos, there's no room for me to go. Oh, I'd wait there, float with the wreckage, fashion a long sword, traverse the Milky Way, trying to get home to you.
Very strong vibrato. Almost feels like a quiver in the vocalist. Ah, shifting the accented beat there.
Later on, everyone will say it was cool. She had Billie Eilish style, moving to Berlin for a little while, trying to find something to hold on to. Never texts me nothing, but she wants to tell me she's not that hard to find, and message me if you change your mind, darling, I'll keep fine. Everyone will say it was cool. Oh, she had Billie Eilish style, moving to Berlin for a little while, trying to find something to hold on to. Never text me nothing, but she wants to tell me she's not that hard to find, and message me if you change your mind, darling, I'll keep fine.
Yeah. Also, was it right? The abrasive segments came back. So here's the deal here. This is the midpoint of the album. This is track 5 out of 10. And well, time-wise, I think it's a little at 40% right now. But it might as well be the halfway through the track. And this is providing a bit of a peak, right? We've had a lot of songs that have kind of brought us on a roller coaster, but none of them have really hit major moments of release. We've just kind of been in this dreariness with pockets of excitement or chaos, but none that have really given us a moment of release from the dreariness. And that's where this comes in. It is a moment in the middle to sort of act as a palate cleanser to keep the album moving forward while being emotionally resonant. We have somebody who is fixated on someone in such a way that it drives them to being upset. There is visible distress or audible distress in the vocals. It really, again, feels like he's trying to crack into compressed cleans there. And just the crack at all, the vocal crack, I think implies a lot of a loss of one's functions to act typical, right? Which vocal cracks typically come around when you're sobbing and there's crying involved, and it's just a very high emotion uh, event for someone. To me, this is the big release. This is everything, all the sorrow and stuff that's come up to this point is getting to this person, and they're becoming overwhelmed by it all. It is both thematically pertinent to the album while also providing a nice midpoint to help divide up an album that is up to this point feeling very homogenous. Just beautiful use of that. Threes. I just noticed it. The threes pop up everywhere in this album. Um, a lot of the tracks deal with 3/4. We've had an entire song so far that was waltz style. I think that was Bread's song. Not entirely. It was primarily waltz. I think we did push into a 4 for a moment, but um, Chaos Space Marine, while primarily being in 4/4, when it introduces something a bit more chaotic, which I've just realized is probably why it's in there. It's the only time we've hit something like this, which was a 7/4. We were alternating 4 and 3. We found a way to introduce 3 into that. I mean, a lot of these songs I've started out in 3/4. It's the first time signature that I hear most times. And this one really pushed that forward by starting in 3/4, utilizing groups of 3. And when we pushed into 4/4, we utilized 3 groups of 3 notes to create our repeated phrase. Da 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 da. It would not surprise me if the repetitions were done in phrasing groupings of 3, possibly like a 9-bar or 9 repetition phrase or something like that to continue to move this. I don't know what it is with 3s in here. They're everywhere. The more I listen to this, I was actually listening there wondering how many moments only had 3 instruments in them. It happened more than once. I'm not going to say that it's a predominant aspect of that track, and it's not something I've been paying attention to in other tracks to know, but there were more than one section there at the end, even though we had different instruments coming in right before the big build-up there. I guess that was about minute 2:15, somewhere in there. It was a series of 3 to 4 instruments if we exclude percussion. Um, and I might be looking too far into that. They might have just wanted a bit more space for those, so they reduced the amount of voices they had going at the same time, and it just happened to dance around that number 3. But yeah, just noticing a lot of 3s around here, which is interesting because the album is about 2. It's about our narrator and this other person. So, I don't know. Dynamics in there were great. That final moment was huge. Oh, we gotta talk about that. Oh, we did. It was chaotic, it was noisy, there's lots of stuff going on, and it was just this overwhelming feeling of emotions. Um, yeah, I think that lines up with everything. Let's hit the lyrics here. You walk up on the raised edge, hands out for balance, you slip and you almost grab mine, but you find your feet. And I've never wanted so much someone to fall. It's just been a weekend, but in my mind, we summer in France with our genius daughters now, and you teach me to play the piano. So this person almost needed his help. He reached out to help, and then they caught themselves. They really wanted to be the hero in that moment, though. But whatever. That's just one thing, one moment in time. Instead, he looks towards a possible future where they're together in France, spending their summer. And she teaches him piano, and they have a very intelligent daughter. You call, I'll be there. What's more, I'm scared of the phone. Don't ring it. Please know that I'm just trying to find some way to keep me in your mind, and later on everyone will say it was cool. So once again, we have this person constantly on our narrator's mind, going through all these memories with this person, and even made up futures, constructed situations. Um, Heck, even our intro idea of helping her while she's, slipping off of a raised edge could be a constructed situation. Not necessarily a memory, but a daydream. And they just want to know that the other person is also thinking about them. We hit the chorus. She had Billie Eilish style, moving to Berlin for a little while, trying to find something to hold on to. Never texts me nothing but she wants to tell me she's not that hard to find. And message me if you change your mind, darling, I'll keep fine. So most of those are quotations. She had Billie Eilish style is one quote. Moving to Berlin for a little while is another quote. Trying to find something to hold on to is a quote. Never texts me nothing but she wants to tell me she's not that hard to find is a quote. And, which is not a quote, it implies that this is a series of quotes and this is the last one. Message me if you change your mind. Finally, we come back to the narrator who says, darling, I'll keep fine. Are these a series of text messages between them, since we've already talked about ringing on the phone and keeping in contact? Are these lyrics? We've already had music be a big part of this with the headphones, right? That was a major part of the last track, was the fact that he found it difficult to connect with this person through technology, specifically talking about her wearing headphones. I don't know. Those are maybe those are pertinent lyrics. Maybe they have meaning to the narrator, lyricist, character. I still don't know if this is fiction or not. It feels maybe a mix of both. A very personal fiction story. A lot of the lyricist being put into the story here. Verse 2. And if we're on a burning starship, the escape pod's filled with your friends, your childhood film photos, there's no room for me to go. Oh, I'd wait there, float with the wreckage, fashion a longsword, traverse the Milky Way, trying to get home to you, and you bring some piece of the stars. So once again, separation, although this one is forced separation. This is something we haven't really talked about too much through this album. Everything up to this point feels like our narrator is in control. It is their choice to leave the country and put this space between them and this other person. But this situation that they're crafting in their mind makes it feel like there's no other option. I would save you, and then I would become this awesome dude with this with a long sword going through the Milky Way, trying to get back home to you. Right? I would try to reduce the space between us. We have the pre-chorus about being scared of the phone and wanting to let them, trying to get them to stay and trying to get them to think of you. The chorus is the same thing. It's got the series of quotes in it. We do that twice over. I don't know. It's interesting. Every track so far, at least 70% of it, all feels very similar. They have a mood and a vibe that they're very good at exploring. And interestingly, the lyrics are all fairly similar as well. They are memories filled with regret, almost sorrow, longing for a single person. This feels like a masterclass in cyclical self-destructive thinking. But it's done so in such a catchy, beautiful manner that it almost takes away from uh, the destructive tendencies that are showcased in here as this person continues to obsess with the distance growing between them and another person. And maybe the airplane flight to America is completely metaphorical. Maybe it's not a physical distance that's coming between these two, but a metaphorical one. Maybe they're still physically together in the same city and they're still dating or together relationship wise, but he feels distant from her, that there's space being placed between them. And the best metaphor for that would be physical space, distance, actual distance. And this is less of a somber memory dive of the good and bad times of this person that they're leaving behind, literally, and more of a recollection of red flags that this relationship was always kind of on the brink of going in this direction and just kind of ignored it because the good times are fine too. I don't know. Again, it's the slogan of the day. We have Haldern, 5 minutes, and then Mark's theme is just 2:45. I'll probably run those back to back, especially since I kind of got a gist for Haldern. I think it's going to be pretty much in line with everything else. And then our last three tracks are 7, 9, and 12.5. They are each going to be done individually. So that's the plan for the rest of this album. So let's run into Haldern and see what's going on. We also have 5 seconds of silence here just because I wonder if there's a purpose to that. There's so much silence on these tracks. Pass that line on from the sax to the piano.
Ignore the hole I've dug again. It's
Very isolating and sweet.
for the evening. I never wanted you to see that much. Of the bodies down there beneath me.
Here we go again. Very harshly repeated idea with a lot of repetition, utilizing silence to break the idea up. There's conflict in the riff. It's divided. It should be cyclical, but it's divided. There's also these fixated lines here. Just out of 3. Oh, beautiful chord progression. The beginning's a little traditionally sappy, but it ends. When I say sappy, but honestly, it's got kind of like a Christmas vibe to it. What? Also, who is Mark? Why does Mark get a theme? We keep having these names dropped. I don't know who they're about, who they're for. Who's Isaac? Who's Mark? Who's Concorde? So Haldern was neat. I also came upon some really interesting things. Haldern was a return to a lot of the form that we had at the end of Good Will Hunting, but primarily what we saw in the first 5 minutes of the album with intro and Chaos Space Marine, with a return to heavy repetition, disjointed riffage, and just an overall want to destroy any sort of flow and harmonic and rhythmic balance that we have in the track. And I came to a conclusion about disruption, that the segmented riffs are disruptive. They take something that is rather harmonious as far as moving between ideas, something that cleanly progresses on and decides to go in a very different direction with it and says, what if we just don't smoothly do this? What if we disrupt stuff? And what does that mean? And the more I started to think about it in the themes that I'm picking up on this album, we have somebody who is hyper fixated on the past in a way that feels disruptive to their present situation. And that fixation word also started to make me think about the highly repetitive lines. Not just a 1 bar riff, but a 1 beat riff, 2 beat riff at max. They are just, to me, it starts to get annoying. Much like our intro, where I really wished we would get moving on. I knew it was 50 seconds, a short time to deal with it, but there at Haldern, our violin was consistently, for most of the second half of the track, playing one idea, one very short idea over and over and over and over. And I just got done talking about how this album feels like exploring the same thing through different lenses. It's consistently moody and dreary, dredging up old memories of a past relationship. How every song is about longing for this person and thinking about them constantly, hoping they're thinking about you. But every song explores this longing in a different manner. It is a hyperfixation on this one person. So much of the music focuses on the dreary melancholy and semi-hopefulness that these memories bring up, but none of them have focused on the repercussions and the act itself of this fixation. And I think it's really cool that Haldern does. There is a hopeful dreariness throughout this album, but the consistency of that is unhealthy. And Haldern leans into that. It explores the idea not of being, or not of missing this person, but the fixation of missing this person. We explore that concept sonically, and the disruptive nature that we hear in it and in Chaos Space Marine is about the disruptive nature of both, it seems, this memory, but also the leaving itself, how it has disrupted the lives of these people. I'm not sure if any of that's accurate as far as authorial intent. I'm not sure if they intended it or not, but it's definitely something I'm getting out of this. I'd be glad to not hear that repetition again, the fixation repetition specifically. But from an artistic angle, I really dig it. Now, I haven't talked about the drums much at all here. I've talked about some of the violin work. I've focused on the vocals for a little bit. I've talked about the composition and the layering. I've talked about the sax, piano. I have not brought up the drums once. Honestly, it's because I can't remember anything the drums do. They are masters at blending in. I know there's drumming throughout this album. I can hear a hi-hat in some places, like memory-wise, thinking back on stuff. It's not what my brain is latching on to. It's not the memories that I'm putting into my short-term memory here. everything is of the pitched instruments. And it's because, I had that thought during Haldern. So I started to focus, what is the drum doing here? It is blending into the background. That is its job. Be the rhythmic backbone to the song and make sure you're not seen, make sure you're not heard. Be the support without being the lead. They do it masterfully. It really, the beat is felt, but the drums are unheard. It's remarkable, honestly. Um, it's a very precise type of drumming, very restrained, and there's probably some production EQ stuff that goes in there into sort of masking it into the background as well. The rest of the instrumentation is also louder than it consistently, and it's not frequent. Whereas most rock tracks are going to utilize the drums in most sections of every track, the drums here are used sparingly when they are needed the most. And when they are brought in to be this rhythmic backbone, they are not overdone. One track, if I remember right, was just snare and a bass drum. I don't think it was a kit. I think this was legit a symphonic or orchestral snare and orchestral bass drum. Primarily because the bass drum felt bigger than a floor bass. But yeah, no cymbals at all. I don't remember what track that was. It was The Waltz. Good Will Hunting? Maybe Bread Song. Definitely somewhere in the middle of the album there. Um, yeah, stripped down. What do we need? We need two different bassier tones, two separate lower tones. We don't want any cymbal work, and they're all going to be on downbeats. That's the only time I did talk about it because it was mixing waltz with like militaristic ideas. Not military, marching. The opening like 8 bars or 12 bars or something was jumping back and forth between a waltz rhythm and a march, a semi march, not even a real march because there was no snare rolls, but the rhythmic placement of the bass kicks wasn't matching for a waltz. So I did talk about the drums once. One time out of 7 songs now. Just kind of wild. Uh, this happened in Haldern, but we heard more of it in Mark's theme. The saxophone barely. Oh, we might have heard it in Good Will Hunting as well. Just barely putting enough air pressure behind it to form a sound. I explained a little bit of this in Floating Points reaction. I'll put the link right there for y'all. When you play an aerophone instrument, there is a threshold. Well, not all of them. Some of them reeded for sure. Brass. Yeah. Okay, so brass, there's a threshold of buzziness. You actually buzz your lips together like a. I don't know if that got picked up because I have like noise suppression on this or whatever, but you actually buzz your lips to produce sound in brass instruments. Um, Anyways, though, there is a threshold that the reed will vibrate on a reeded instrument. You have to have a certain amount of air pressure, and that's why at the beginning of these notes, you'll hear the air before you hear the note, because the pressure that causes the reed to vibrate, it's not vibrating enough to actually produce the sound yet, the note. And there's something very intimate about that. I absolutely love it. It showcases an unwillingness to move past the most absolute quietest you can play a note. And that's not to say that volume and air pressure are the same. They are related. They are independent qualities of playing an aerophone. But for sake of simplicity here and to keep this conversation rolling, we'll just say that reaching that bare minimum threshold of air pressure is the same as trying to play your instrument as quietly as possible. And I think there's something very awesome about that we heard it in both of these moments where we haven't heard it anywhere else. I even specifically mentioned how on the downbeat you would hear the air first and then the note, which feels like it's dragging a bit behind. When the line got passed to the piano, we didn't have that problem. There is something very human about that. And it also ties into a lot of that dreary, beaten down vibe that I was talking about with our vocalist. The vocalist gives up a moment of the song, of the album. The vocalist is present in a lot of this album to pass the lead over to the saxophone, and the saxophone continues with this beaten down, low energy style of playing, where the vocals are just kind of down here and dreary and low energy. The saxophone can't even is attempting to even play the notes without having the proper air pressure for them. It's just a beautiful passing of ideas. Speaking of passing of ideas, that's something else that happens often here is that we'll have one instrument start with one lick and pass it to another instrument. Primarily, I heard this in I'm going to go with Haldern based on these notes, but I honestly can't remember. It might have been Mark's theme, where the saxophone was doing the bit and then the piano came in after it and copied the same idea, an octave up, I think. And we actually had a lot of octave play there at the end of Haldern as they went more and more tense and started playing around with note relationships between dyads. We had our violin and our saxophone. Saxophone was staying on one note, and the violin was just moving up and down and all around. And we were hearing all these different note relationships, which is very cool, just from a music theory perspective, to hear, as we continue to rise up the scale, what do these notes sound like together? And I've always talked about how dyads have characteristics, and that was a really good place to hear a lot of them back to back, and some are more tense than others. Some are more stable. Some have a bit of an energy to them. Some a bit more sorrowful. Um, and man, this is really good. I don't think I've ever had back to back transitions like this. Nice segues, but that leads us into the idea of harmony, which is something that I haven't really touched on here much at all, but that I'm really loving. It's not even just the harmony of the instruments, like they're at the end having our series of dyads, but we also have harmonies in the vocals, which we're seeing less and less of, unfortunately. I did enjoy them at the beginning. We had several sections where we had a vocalist center and vocalists coming out on the sides. Um, so, but yeah, we also have the instrument harmonies. And we also play around with these harmonies. Some of them are more consonant, some of them introduce dissonance. There's just a lot of really great moments of multiple instruments playing the same thing with different notes, and enjoying the atmospheres and emotions that they're bringing. So, yeah, and that takes us to Mark's theme, which I don't really have much to add to. It exists, it's a nice. Well, technically a sax solo that turns into a sax solo with accompaniment, with the piano coming in. I think the third time through, we did introduce a third instrument. I don't remember what it was or what it was doing. It might have been doing an additional line, because the piano was mostly foundational, chordal stuff for the sax to play over. And then there was random talking at the end. Like, I just have no idea what's going on with Mark's theme. It's still somber. It carries over a lot of the atmosphere that we've been exploring on this album, but it feels a bit disconnected from everything else, primarily because it's a wholly unique compositional take as far as this album is concerned up to this point. Everything else is predicated on a heavy usage of lyrics and large instrumentation. And this was a solo to a solo with accompaniment to a duet with accompaniment, three instruments tops, no vocals. Similar vibes, completely different approach. We're going to hit the lyrics for Haldern and carry on to our next track. Ignore the hole I've dug again, bringing us back to that line from Chaos Space Marine. It's only for the evening. I never wanted you to see that much of the bodies down there beneath me. So again, digging holes as a metaphor for the mistakes of the past. And I never wanted you to know those things about me, right? The bad parts of my history. You're the only one I've ever known who broke the world so quietly and turned your perfect hands to me, and you ruptured every bone. Might even be meaning to say that this is their first relationship. You're the only person who have turned your hands to me. And in doing so, you have completely shaken my world. You've ruptured every bone I have. Which is going to make all this fixation really being put into perspective, as this could be their first and only relationship they've ever had, and they're leaving it behind. Or they're realizing there's a distance growing between them. Still not sure if the airplane is metaphorical or literal yet, but we'll keep rolling. We formed a ring around your home to stop your body leaving, but you burned the final question there and you rose out through the ceiling. I turned my face and hid in shame. You took my tired body in and you wrapped it up in your undershirt and you pray for the pain to leave. Hmm. So we tried to stop you from leaving, but you left anyways. But then you still took my body in. The pain I was in, you were still there to comfort me. So, okay. So the relationship ended, the romantic side of it ended, but they remained friends afterwards, is what I'm getting there. And Mark's theme is instrumental, and it just says Mark singing. Fantastic. So let's wrap this up. I say wrap this up, I mean let's just go to the next song. Because apparently I don't know how to speak right now. So we're moving on to the place where he inserted the blade. And like I mentioned, these last 3 tracks are pretty lengthy, all pushing around 10 minutes each, so we're probably going to stop at the end of each of them to further discuss. Let's dive into it. We got another 3. Although I suppose some of these could be felt 6/8 groupings of 3, but I think the factor of 3 is present, and that's the more important part than if there's actually a physical 3 in the time signature. Beautiful. There's a bit of peace to this. Interesting. The place where he inserted the blade, I think, would be one of the more aggressive tracks.
World where you're needed, so you never made nice with the locals, but you tied me up slow with your vine stuff. It takes a few years, but they break bones.
Speaking of the drums, there are none here, but there's still a strong percussive feeling.
We're stronger, we tell all our school friends.
There's our drums. No cymbals though.
Darling, the rest of my body, it's yours then. I know you're scared. Well, I'm scared too. Oh, but every time I try to make lunch for
Why am I getting Beatles vibes?
I end up dreaming of you, and you come to me. Good morning. Show me the place where he inserted the blade. Oh, praise the Lord, burn my house. I get lost, I freak out. You come home and hold
Very
me
catchy
tight,
chorus,
as if it never happened
very
at
powerful.
all. Good morning. Show me the place where he inserted the blade. Good morning. Where is your light? Am I home? I will hold to my chest. Where the wind can exist, I will try not to keep you too long. So clean your soup maker and breathe in your chicken, broccoli, and everything. The tug that's between us, that long string, Concorde bound to and my
Concorde up again.
evening. The good hunter's guide to a bad night. Darling, I'll spoil it myself. Thanks, you're leaving. Well, I tried just to stroke your dreams better.
So many words.
Darling, I see that you're not really sleeping. And I know you're tired. Well, I'm tired too. Oh, but every time I try to make lunch for anyone else in my head, I end up
Fun little embellishing ideas here with the violin and flute.
and you come to me. Good morning. Show me the place where he inserted the blade. Oh, praise the Lord, burn my house. I get lost, I freak out. You come home, hold me tight, as if it never
It's got a very pop country vibe to the vocals.
Show me the fifth or the cadence you want me to play. Good morning. Show me where to tie the other end of this train.
Speaking of harmonies, yeah, very nice, beautiful ending. 20 seconds of silence again. See, the thing is, we either wait right now Or when I come back, we're like, oh, we'll check out the next song, and then we're waiting in silence there. There really is no winning on it. So this is interesting. This is, where Haldern and the ending of Good Will Hunting stood in stark contrast to the constructed element of the album we had heard up to that point, and it provided chaotic um, aspects to the track, or chaotic aspects to the album. This contrasts the vibe. We have had mostly this mellow somberness, and while this one still has a mellow tempo and feel for some of it, it also is bright, cheerful, and powerful. You can hear it even in the vocals having good air pressure and volume behind them. They're not dreary and lagging, they're very punctuated and clear and excited. There is power behind them. And that pairs well with the brightness in the music. I even likened it to some Beatles stuff for some reason. I'm not sure exactly what that is because I honestly haven't listened to a lot of Beatles music, but it just has this bright floweriness to it that I don't know. It's the first band I think of. I don't know if other people felt that as well. Um, Particularly staying on the topic of the vocals for a little bit though. Does anybody else get some emo inspirations here? So, I don't remember what band it was, but I said that the lyrics were very emo and over dramatic, um, almost to the point of parody. But I say that from a place of love because this is exactly the type of lyrics I really like. Um, and I kind of got some of that stuff in here, but also the vocal breaks, the melancholy through most of this, which I think works well, the fact that it seems to be wholly about a relationship, and um, two specific things that popped up in this track specifically is a vocal quaver, waver, I don't know, a quiver. That's the word I want. It's not a vibrato. It's like a lack of control. Either that or it's an extremely tense vibrato, which could be possible as well. Tight vibrato, sorry. But it almost sounds like his vocal cords, he doesn't have full control or he's releasing control and allowing them to vibrate a little loosely. Um, Something that I relate to a lot of the untrained emo vocalists. Not what we would hear in pop emo specifically, which brought more of a controlled poppy vocal to it, but some of the earlier stuff that kind of lines up more with the indie rock hands off kind of stuff with the vocal delivery and kind of allowing it to be a little rougher around the edges. Um, but also this idea that we heard a little bit in Cap and Jazz, and something that I really relate to Gerard Way for My Chemical Romance, is this cyclical rising up and rising down, the da 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 da, and just repeating this over and over and over while the music around it swells. But to me, it's just a very emo thing to do. Is this very static, rigid, rising and falling technique that allows the song to have this cyclical, uh, energizing drive to it. The tension continues to rise. There's no resolution in our vocal line. It's again this idea of fixation, and for some reason, like I said, I really associate that with emo. And it started to click, and I started to think about some of these lyrics, and I was like, some of this is kind of cheesy, which is very emo. Emo is kind of a cringy lyric set when you think about it. There's a lot of really cringy lines, especially since emo is either aimed at or usually written by teens and 20 somethings. There's just not a lot of world experience in that, and the lines end up making mundane things much larger than they should be, or that somebody with more life experience would make them out to be. And so it's earnest to their lived experience, but way, way melodramatic for people who tend to have lived more of life. Not necessarily specifically coming from age, but just where relationships are not the end all be all aspect of of your existence. And yeah, a lot of it, this feels very emo to me now that I'm thinking about it. It's emo by way of band kids. You got some people who know violin and maybe are classical percussionists. They don't know the drum kit, but they know their way around cymbals and marimbas and snares and big orchestral bass drums, and you got your flautist. You do have somebody who plays guitar, but the distortion has only been kicked on twice, I think, so far. They definitely feel more classically trained. We have a saxophonist. There's a lot of jazz inspiration in here. It's a bunch of band kids who want to make an emo album. And from that angle, it's starting to grow on me. I mean, it already was. I've spoken fairly positively about this. Even the parts that have bounced off of me, I have come to appreciate from a thematic angle, at least. But yeah, it's kind of weird that I could see, if I had thought about it, if I wasn't so fixated on rock, joining a rock band as a teenager, something that I might have done back when, the late 2000s, when pop emo was really becoming big. I mean, we had Hawthorne Heights, we had My Chemical Romance, uh, so many. I mean, emo was just real big back then. And I was in band, and I knew a lot of people in band who were into emo music. This is something I could have seen us doing if I didn't end up pursuing, being a bassist in a emo band. Yeah, that's what we were. Now I think about it, the lyrics, and I gotta find some footage. I gotta show you guys. I think I might have some practice sessions recorded somewhere, I hope. Um, I know we recorded one night show and it was just terrible footage. We used like the black and white mode. Anyways, I'm getting way off topic here, but I'm gonna see if I can't scrounge up some old footage somewhere. Maybe one of my old band buddies, get in contact with them and see if they still have the files or something. Anyways, back on this though. This is emo music by band kids, and it makes me chuckle because it's kind of a funny concept, but they do it in such earnest and sincerity while also being way into that schlocky over drama. It's really endearing in kind of a comical way. But it's done with such precision and understanding of the musicality of everything that I can't really fault them on anything. The production is solid, the music is solid. Not only does it have a bit of that rock power in sections that you can obviously feel the influence of, it's still fairly predominantly rooted in classical and jazz stylings. And it's this beautiful thing that comes together so much better than I would expect. Maybe so much better than it has any right to. It's so many different things that honestly don't really fit together, but they pull it off some way, and I'm just flabbergasted and happy that they did it. Um, do we hit the lyrics? Do I have anything else I want to talk about there? Oh, yeah, the positive ending. I think it was Mark's theme that did end on a bit of an uplift as well, which maybe marks the turn in the album, but this definitely feels brighter, feels more optimistic, whereas everything else has been melancholy with hopefulness. This actually feels uplifting. We have a really nice resolution to this, and several sections of this track have good resolution to them, or I should say positive resolution to them. This is not a song that is marked by its dreariness, but occasionally dips into it before being defeated by the hopeful and positivity in it. Um, and that just sets it up to be wholly different than the rest of this track. And I love that. I don't know how long it will stay. I don't remember Snow Globes being a positive song. And basketball shoes, I can glean nothing from the title. What does that mean? Sneakers, they're kicks. Why are they called basketball shoes? Maybe that's a colloquial thing from where they're from, their hometown and culture or whatever. I don't know. But anyways, I have an inkling of an idea of why this song was so positive and powerful. We're gonna hit the lyrics first so I can solidify this because it's entirely based off some lines that I've heard. I want to make sure that that is the gist of the song lyrically. So, you're scared of a world where you're needed, so you never made nice with the locals. But you tied me up slow with your vine stuff. It takes a few years, but they break bones. It takes a few months, but our bones heal. We're stronger, and we tell all our school friends, and they sign our casts in the playground. Darling, the rest of my body, it's yours then. Once again, a very visually interesting way of saying that we hurt each other, but we get stronger through it, and the rest of our friends validate that. It still leads me to the idea that this relationship was not always great and that there was always a divide, growing between them. I mean, he says, "You break my bones, but the bones get stronger, and I thank you for that. You can break the rest of my body." And that is not a healthy way to go about having a relationship with someone. Um, the pre-chorus says, "I know you're scared, and I'm scared too. That every time I try to make lunch for anyone else in my head, I end up dreaming of you. And you come to me." So, yeah, once again, leaning into the fixation angle. "Good morning. Show me the place where he inserted the blade. All praise the Lord, burn my house. I get lost, I freak out. You come home and hold me tight as if it never happened at all. Good morning." Um, okay, so that's not the angle I thought it was going in. This to me felt like a moment where he got to be the protector, the caregiver. A lot of this album has been life sucked for me and you were there for me, placing a lot of the emotional support on this person he's fixated with in their relationship. I was hoping that this would be the song that said, show me where you got hurt and I will help you. And that's why it's all powerful and triumphant. It is the moment where they get to be a stronger person in the relationship. And that's not, this chorus just completely flips that. Show me where you're hurt. I'll get lost and I'll freak out over it, and you can hold me tight and calm me down. So now I have no idea why musically this is such a different trend. Show me the place where you inserted the blade. Good morning. Where is your light? Am I home? I will hold to my chest where the wind can exist. I will try not to keep you too long. So clean your soup maker and breathe in your chicken, broccoli, and everything. The tug that's between us, the long string, Concorde bound to, and my evening. The good hunter's guide to a bad night. Darlin', I'll spoil it myself. Thanks, you're leaving. Well, I tried just to stroke your dreams better, but darlin', I see that you're not really sleeping. This is a verse I think that needs to be played with the song itself, and it's one of the few times that I don't like this format of checking out the lyrics so far after doing the music, because I have no idea what the cadence is here. It's rhythmically all over the place. Lines sometimes bleed into the next and other times stop short. Some ideas are in the middle of a line. It's sort of all over the place, but I think the gist here is the division between these two people, that they're never on the same page. We get the idea that every time I dream of someone else, I end up dreaming of you. We go back to the chorus about getting freaked out. The outro says, show me the fifth or the cadence you want me to play. Good morning. Show me where to tie the other end of this chain. So once again, showcasing the red flags here. This is a person who is so infatuated with, again, possibly the first person to have ever been in a relationship with them, that not only will they allow them to break their bones and offer their body completely to this person, as we saw in the first verse, but literally says, tell me what you want me to do and I will do it, including possibly chaining myself down. I mean, the idea of show me where to tie the other end of this chain could allude to anything. But the idea is freedom restriction. I'm giving everything of myself to you. So again, fixation in a very unhealthy amount, which led to a lot of these memories, which is still kind of the angle I'm rolling on this. Overall, as much as I am enjoying this track musically, it is extremely depressing look at this relationship. Alright, let's move on to the next track. 9 minutes long, Snow Globes. Give this one another listen and see if I have anything different to add to it now that I've heard the rest of the album. Harmony, dyads. The dyads are split. If we look at this as the two people, never on the same page. One goes up, one goes down. Returning back to the melancholy, we had one uplifting song, that was it.
Let the clamp do what the clamp does best. I know you're coming home, Henry. Just tell me when. We must let the clamp do what the clamp does best. That's a funny looking shrine on your bedroom wall.
Interesting tonality there. The note for room and wall were not in key. They didn't provide dissonance, but they didn't fit either with the emotion the rest of the band was laying into.
Your friend, the one that you loved, did you keep him on your side? Did you ever get to ask what on earth he meant by? Might take some time to learn how to use these bodies right. But it is for this that God has gave us both the night. On Henry Home,
I love the melodic usage of the drum kit here.
of memory. A small nation of souvenirs make Henry home, but poor asleep. Oh God of weather, Henry knows. Snow globes don't shake on their own.
So I remember that. I didn't remember all of it. Like the lyrics, I don't remember, and I don't even know that having listened to the rest of the album, they make any more sense now. But I remember the build up, I remember the drums, and I remember the intro and the outro. What I really like about this is it's a fun type of slow burn that I think most composers end up trying sometime in their career, in their hobby, whatever. It's they did a little bit of a twist on it, but it's the boomerang composition where if you think, a boomerang goes out, it gets more distance and eventually it comes back to you. It returns to where it started. And that's what we have here, where we have a track that starts at literally one line. In fact, I think we actually have a second or two of silence. So we actually have nothing at the beginning of the track. We have one line that comes in. We increase the instruments, we increase the instruments, we increase the intensity and the volume, and we have a peak, which is just the biggest moment. It includes everything. And then you back it down and you remove each layer in the same order or in the reverse order that they were added. So the most recent one is the one that is also removed first until you end up with just your first line again. Now, like I said, they did a little twist on it at the end in that they directly skipped one step to bring us into our final 45-second outro, which was a repetition of our intro with like 3 instruments or something, and we slowly removed each of those. But the idea is pretty consistent. And it's really fun to build because honestly, you only have to write one thing. You write the big moment, and then you slowly strip things off, and most of the work is making all the sections throughout as the curve flattens out on the sides. Um, but the effects are extremely palpable, especially when you do it like this. It is an extremely effective method of crafting width, volume, texture, and harmonic dynamic elements into a song. This is a song that starts out extremely somber but isolating and ends up bombastic and chest clenching and tense and loud and just very overwhelming in a lot of aspects and finds a way to ease you back down. It's almost like working out where you don't immediately jump at the fastest speed on the treadmill or the biggest the heaviest weights. You start out small and you work up to it. And I'm not even talking about like across your entire time working out. Like when you go to the gym, you've got to stretch. Maybe you start walking before you start jogging and then running. Like you have to build up to your most intense parts. You can't just immediately start working out at the level that your most intensity is at. You got to get up to it. And that's what this always feels like because as well as your warming up period, you also have a cooling down period. You don't want to go from, full on sprinting for 10, 15, 20 minutes to, walking again. You got to lower the treadmill. And that's exactly what this does. It is a beautiful rise into tension and anxiety and a nice easing back down from it. As a listener, it is a symmetrical ride, so it feels nice to be on. But it's also a gradual ride on both ends, getting up to and coming off of. As with anything, pacing is important, and that's where this type of composition excels at. It's naturally built into it. You really don't even have to think about it. Um, and it works really well for this type of music. Everything else in the album kind of has this vibe as well, moving from more melancholic, isolated feels to bigger moments. Sometimes that bigger moment is tense, sometimes it's just sadder, sometimes it does have some brightness to it. But for an album that consistently moves between these two extremes, it makes sense to have this type of composition in there as well. Everything else, as usual, just kind of fits in here. The vocal delivery, both the really low energy, somber style, and allowing his voice to crack and to push it volume wise and range wise, and to really get up into those higher aspects that feel not unnatural, but less comfortable than his spoken word singing style. And just allowing himself to be vulnerable like that, allowing the notes to crack and to get that distortion in there. The layering, the masterful layering, all the ways that the instruments harmonize with each other on the way up and the way that they clash with each other at the peak. And it's almost like the drums got mad at me saying I wasn't paying attention to them because they made sure I heard them this time. And of course, it's a thematic reason. I'm not sold on it right now. It is absolutely necessary for the tension, but don't I don't know what it means thematically. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe the drum section is entirely to sell the moment. It is the frustration that comes along with this. Because fixation is a type of compulsion. And people typically want release from compulsion. It's what the whole thing of OCD is about. You give into your compulsions so that you can have that release from, whatever's driving you mentally to focus on this concept. And when you don't get that, you're going to get frustrated. And I wonder if that's what the drumming is. It's a release of those frustrations, because once again, this song, half of it is one line. God of weather, Henry knows, snow globes don't shake on their own. Over and over and over and over and over. And it actually lends itself well into the composition, because I had mentioned you start with one line, you end with that same line, and the song grows because of what you put on top of it. The foundation is the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And the lines you put above them are the same thing over and over, just for a shorter time, because they come in later and will be removed sooner. But everybody has one thing to do. So yeah, not only does it lean into what they already do well, which is dynamic contrast, but it also focuses on the fixation concept that I think this song is about, by being a song that is based on one idea per instrument. So good. And then that makes the drums stand out even more. They're the only one other than the vocals, which do follow a sort of pattern. We do have variation on it, but the drums are the only ones that are completely unbound by repetition. They are completely free. Free to make noise. Free to be aggressive and abrasive. Free to be louder than everyone else. Which is interesting because we have had several lyrics about being tied down. Or held down in some cases. Yeah, this song makes a lot more sense in the context of the album. I had no notes on that one. Very trance-like. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of slipped into a casual, trancey kind of thing in the middle there. Just kind of eyes glazed over, just letting the song wash over me. Let's see. We must let the clamp do what the clamp does best. I know you're coming home, Henry. Just tell me when. I know. We must let the clamp do what the clamp does best. That's a funny-looking shrine on your bedroom wall. Well, I'm sorry, Henry. He doesn't look anything like Jesus at all. So the repeated line here just says that people are going to have tendencies and you have to let them do what they're going to do. Some of these lines, I'm like, that line's familiar. I still don't know what it's going on about. I don't know what the funny looking shrine is, and that he doesn't look anything like Jesus. Your friend, the one that you love, did you keep him on your side? Did you ever get to ask what on earth he meant by might take some time to learn how to use these bodies right? But it is for this that God has gave us both the night. And Henry hung to all of this. His battleship of memory, a small nation of souvenirs, make Henry whole, but porously. So, the figure on the wall and this sentence that this person said to him, and a bunch of other stuff, are all memories that Henry has kept with him. Calls it a small nation of souvenirs. They make him whole, but porous. And porous just means that it's whole but holy. There are holes in it. Interesting. I like that. That's a good line. And then it goes into the Henry knows that snow globes don't shake on their own. Huh. I don't know. We got to let people do what they're going to do. And so Henry let somebody that they cared about go on, leave. Maybe our protagonist from our other tracks. And the only thing left are these souvenirs. And Henry keeps them to remember his friend. Snow globes don't shake on their own, though. Some things in this world require help to execute their purpose. And Henry's feeling alone, and he feels purposeless outside of the relationship with his friend. That's what I think. And that's why it's kind of somber and at the beginning, but also angry in the middle. Maybe it's not so much about the frustration. Well, actually, yeah, the frustration of losing a friend who you kind of have your identity tied to is what I'm reading there. Big shift of perspective, though. Also, who's Henry? Another name that just is casually dropped. It's these names that make me think that this is more personal or maybe anecdotally related to the lyricist more so than being completely fictional. All right, let's wrap this up. We got basketball shoes, lots of lyrics here, a couple of instrumental sections. And it's actually, this says it's broken up into 3 movements with an interlude between movement 2 and 3. So, all right, longest track on the album, 12.5 minutes. Pause the video if you need to, get some water, grab a snack. Let's wrap this album up. Starting out isolated and somber, just like how we ended our last one. Single instrument, lots of silence. to set the mood, and then bring in a melody line. Very smooth sax line. And it feels like we're leaning more towards an optimistic ending here.
Concorde flies in my
Concorde again.
tears the house to shreds, defines the night as such a home for us, stick and sex, and leaves no trace of luck at every market town that we intersect. I die like 15 times.
That dotted quarter, giving us accents that shift from downbeat to offbeat. And a dotted quarter is 3/8 notes.
And I'm feeling kinda normal with a packed lunch. Train rides don't hurt much these days. We're all working on ourselves and we're praying that the rest don't mind how much we've changed. So if you see me looking strange with a fresh style, I'm still not feeling that great. And then it's
Interesting.
soft focus all around you. You can't see the football game on my dad's sofa. We are still, and we never look at our phone anymore.
Spends a lot of time letting the music exist between the verses. Not even, I mean, this one has a lead, but our opening 3-minute idea didn't. Ah, nice accelerando. Oh, okay. Interesting transition between ideas. Not a big fan of it.
Oh, I can't think of anything better.
This feels very straightforward rock.
And drown in me like boyfriend jeans. Oh, I haven't felt this way in like ever. I am the Congo, you are the weather. And the clam is a cracked smile cheek. And it tortures me.
More of those dotted quarters, giving us groupings of 3.
And I haven't felt this way in like ever. I am the Congo, you are the weather.
1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. That's what it is. And another hard break. A very slow hocket. So slow it's hard to even hear the larger idea. Well, that's the most divided I've been all album. It feels like a micro revisiting of every theme we've had on the album, and in a way, it feels like a TLDR, a summary of the album at whole. We jump between somber melancholy and bright optimism and chaotic flurries of repeated ideas and tense, anxiety driven highs. And it feels weird for, for the album to go on this carefully crafted ride. And then we get to the end, it's like, also, we're going to do a super condensed version of what we just did. It's supposed to, at least in my mind, the ending punctuates what this album was about, not recaps it. And musically, it was like everything that we've done, do it again. I don't get it, especially since all of these movements that were going into it are wholly disjointed. None of them flow into one another. Many of them are complete hard stops, much like classical movements, less like prog rock movements. And they just, musically, there's no flow here. Which, that's not to say the album has been full of it, but primarily a lot of what we've listened to is harmonious. Not always harmonically harmonious, but it's done a good job of feeling contained and connected, whereas this felt like four different parts, four wholly different parts. One for each style of music we've heard so far. Again, it feels more like a summary or a recap than a finality to it. It's almost like, hey, in case you missed it, let's run that for you again, but a little quicker this time. In that sense, I think it's a fantastic track to show somebody if they've never heard Black Country New Road before. This would be a fantastic reaction track. It kind of showcases everything that they do well. I don't think it's their best song. I think Snow Globes is actually a really good track to showcase that one specific idea that they do very well. But this showcases everything that they've done in the track. If you want to show somebody what they can do, this has it all. But it's also a bit disjointed because of that. Individually, I loved many of these moments. The ending was really great too, but at the cost of undermining what Snow Globes did. I almost feel like ending the track on Snow Globes would have been better. I don't know where you could put Basketball Shoes though. I don't think it fits anywhere in the album. By the sheer idea that it's a recap. It's a bit too chaotic to place in the first third. It's too diverse to place in the middle. It would not work after Mark's theme. It would not work next to Haldern. Haldern really needs the energy from the Out of Good Will Hunting to run into it. I guess you could kind of place it after Mark's theme and before the place where he inserted the blade. Except the ending of this is definitely designed to be an album ender. But I just don't think it. I think it takes everything Snow Globes did well as far as being near the end of an album and just tosses it out the window and chooses to retread those same steps at the end of the track again. I don't. Maybe lyrically, it has a lot of depth that places it as an ending idea, but man, I'm not gonna say I loved every moment of this album. I didn't. I've had my criticisms for it. The ending was a rough start for me personally, based on the type of music I like, but I've had a really positive time with this. And the intro to this, our midpoint interlude, both felt a bit too meandering for me. To me, I don't think it earned its 12-minute runtime. And the ending was a retread of a feeling we just got done checking out with Snow Globes. I don't think it did it any better than Snow Globes did. I don't want to say it feels like fluff, but I think everything that came up in here was done better in another track. This is a poor way to finish the album, at least in my book. Some people may absolutely love this, right? Again, I want to say I'm not some sort of musical authority or anything like that. This is just my personal opinion about this. Very what's that word? Objective, subjective. Very subjective reading here. But I don't musically alone. Like I said, lyrically, we'll get into that. Maybe it deserves to be here at the end, and the album wouldn't feel right without those words. But musically, I don't feel like this is the way you want to end an album. At least that is to say, it's left a bad taste in my mouth. Especially after I think Snow Globes did such a fantastic job. This was supposed to carry on from that and finish the album out from that peak. You know, we peaked at Haldern and the end of Good Will Hunting. That was our midpoint. And Snow Globes was our next peak right at the end. This should have rode off of that in some direction other than everything that we've done. It does not, I don't know, something about it just feels really weird. And I can't even say any of it is bad. They continue to do a lot of the things we've heard them do already that I've already praised. It's just its placement as the final moment of the album is really, if this was anywhere else in the track, I'd be like, okay, this is great. You know, this is an interesting way to combine everything they've done. It still would have been a bit abrasive with those harsh transitions, but as an album closer, following up under Snow Globes, it does not hit the mark for me. And again, it doesn't mean it's a bad song. Its placement is just weird, but I also understand it doesn't fit anywhere else. I don't know, it's a weird situation. I would not place it anywhere else in the album, but it does not belong here. Let's hit some lyrics. We'll see what this wrapping up these themes of missing people. And that's what it is too. I don't think it's supposed to be a series of songs about one person missing someone else. It does feel that way from the beginning, but as we move closer towards the end of the album, it feels like stories of people missing other people. But then we have these recurring ideas. Concorde flies in my room. Why does this continue to show? What is with the Billie Eilish thing? Like there's so many phrases and ideas that are recurring motifs lyrically. Concorde flies in my room, tears the house to shreds, defines the night as such, a home for us, stick insects, and leaves no trace of luck. At every market town that we intersect, I die like 15 times. A dark blue stem brings me to their breast, and I'm feeling kinda normal with a packed lunch. Train rides don't hurt much these days. We're all working on ourselves, and we're praying the rest don't mind how much we've changed. So if you see me looking strange with a fresh style, I'm still not feeling that great. And then it's in soft focus all around you. You can't see the football game on my dad's sofa. We are still and we never look at our phones anymore. So a lot of this feels like getting used to new life. A life without someone, a life in a new city, a life in a new country, new culture. Things feel weird and out of place and distorted and destroyed sometimes, as if a giant bird flew into your house and dashed everything to the ground. Says that feels kind of normal with a packed lunch. Train rides don't hurt as much these days. Maybe train rides are reminiscent of something um, in a past life. And he says, I just pray that the rest don't mind how much we've changed. People grow up, they mature, and just being in a new atmosphere is going to alter some of the ways you interact with stuff, some of the ways you act at all. So it says, if you look at me strange, or if you see me looking strange with a fresh style, I'm still kind of iffy on everything. I might look fresh, but I'm not. We have a little bit of an instrumental break. That was our somber, isolated one. I can't think of anything better. Pick a hair off my sweater and drown in me like boyfriend jeans. I haven't felt like this in ever. I haven't felt this way in like ever. I'm the convo, you are the weather. And the clamp is a cracked smile cheek, and it tortures me, and I haven't felt this way in like ever. And then our final repeated fixation. In my bedsheets now wet of Charlie, I pray to forget. All I've been forms the drone, we sing the rest. Oh, your generous loan to me, your crippling interest. I have got nothing. I really don't. Uh, verse 1, I think I've got a decent read on. Places have changed, looks have changed, but things are still just kind of the same underneath. But verse 2, I haven't felt this way in forever. I'm the convo, you're the weather. The clamp is a cracked smile cheek, and it tortures me. And the only thing I get out of verse 3 was your generous loan to me, your crippling interest. You tried to help me out, but you keep hanging over my head, and I feel more and more indebted to you every day. But the all I've been forms the drone. We sing the rest. I don't know. And Charlie, another random name drop. Uh, yeah, I was really on board with everything going on with this album until Basketball Shoes, which has completely thrown me for a loop, musically and lyrically. It kind of ties up everything in. I mean, is it supposed to be alluding to the fact that we've had three separate protagonists? Which is why we have three highly different sections. I talked about earlier that it feels like the album is not one person having several memories, but several instances of similar situations, several tales of fiction. But maybe that's not true at all. Maybe we've been looking at three specific people, and this is the culmination of all of their stories. All of them finding distance between themselves and who they care for or who helps them, who was always a shoulder to cry on kind of deal. And that's why it feels so disjointed? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this is not a terrible way to end the album. Maybe it doesn't make sense because I had the wrong idea of what the album was. Maybe this is a perfect final statement to say, but I only understood half the album. So this statement makes no sense to me. This conclusion is wildly inappropriate based on my understanding of it, but my understanding of the album is flawed. And that's where I'm going to land on this. those are my thoughts. Black Country, New Road, Ants from Up There. No roads in the sky, though. That's terrible. I don't even know why I said that. Let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy it or not? Anything that stood out to you? I thought I had a real strong read of this. Final track tells me I don't. If you have anything to correct me on or help me with context on this album, let me know. Give me some comments. Above the comment section is a description box. Takes you to, there's a link in there that'll take you to this link tree. It's got links for everything related to the channel. Several ways to support the channel can be found in there. You can also find the link to the Discord server. Email me. Social media is my music. There's just a bunch of stuff's in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all three. We'll be back tomorrow with, what are we doing tomorrow? Oh, Patreon live stream. 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll try to have that up for viewing Monday or Tuesday. I think I've been pretty good about getting up on Tuesdays, so we'll probably shoot for that. Tuesday morning EST sometime it'll be available. And then Monday we'll start next week's theme. Thanks for hanging out with me this long. 3 hours is not a short amount of time, but this is one of the shorter album reviews, so regardless, if you're still here, thanks. Till next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.